since 1999 till date, this is the first time, Shehu, that there is an attempt, a concerted attempt to eliminate any form of opposition. That's one. Two, the level of state capture is just bewildering. And I can't just imagine that every institution of state, is being captured. And it's captured just to ensure that power, is retained. And so the question is, if the president of a country like Nigeria isn't a statesman, I don't think that they will be interested in reducing their powers. We always say this, that when Justice Uwais, so rest in peace, and his committee recommended that, they knew what they were talking about. Because in this particular jurisdiction, in our jurisdiction, the heads of, whether the governors and the president, they are called leaders of their political parties. This is a context where there isn't party supremacy. What is happening is the hegemonic powers of parties that determine, how a party is run. So everyone is kowtowing and kissing the ring of one particular man and one particular individual. And that is not how parties, should run. You can't say that legislations should just serve the interests of the incumbent and you eliminate any form of contestation. When you do that, democracy, weakens. It's no longer interesting. What you have is some level of authoritarianism. And that is really sad for Nigeria.
The first airports identified.
Well, thank you very much. Let's begin with the question whether it's too early. I think we're actually late in the game because the act was passed in February. We've had the Ekiti elections. We have Osun elections in less than 3 weeks, and then we have the general elections. Now, Dr. Abati, the act introduced new procedures for managing results collation or transmission. As you know, Section 60 sub 3 makes transmission of results to the IREV compulsory. Now, what has happened and what the public needs to understand is that, one, when polling is concluded on election day and the hard copy result sheets are completed, the results do not hit the IREV automatically. That there is a validation process that takes place at the back end before those results make it to the IREV. Now, this is something the public needs to know because there is a validation process that takes place. So once the polling officials take the scanned result sheets, it doesn't hit the IREV directly. At the back end, there is a validation that takes place. The second point, and what the public needs to understand, is that INEC has introduced what is called the electronic EC8A. In other words, when the presiding officer fills the hard copy result sheets, they are expected to enter those results into an electronic version of that result sheet that it's on the BVAS. It is a new procedure that INEC has introduced. It test run this in the FCT elections. It deployed this in the Ekiti elections, and it's going to do that in the Osun elections. Now, that new innovation was introduced by virtue of paragraph 40 of the regulations and guidelines for the conduct of elections. What has now happened, Dr. Abati and colleagues, is that we now have 3 different tracks for results for one particular polling unit. The first one is the hard copy result sheets. The second one is the electronic EC8A on the BVAS. And then the third one is the scanned copy of the result sheet or the image of the result sheet that is uploaded on the IREV. The big question is what happens if there is a discrepancy between these 3 different results track? We do not know which one will be used to resolve this. And so these are the issues. The other point is, yes, on the IREV, you have the EC8As. Why don't we have the EC8Bs, which is the results collation form for the ward collation and the local government collation? Because the public needs to know to follow the journey of the results from the polling units to the ward and to the local government level. INEC in the past promised that they will publish the EC8Bs and the EC8Cs. We hope that this new commission will do that. These are some of the gaps. These are some of the issues. And what we have urged INEC to do is to issue a protocol. The public needs to understand what is the journey of results from the polling units to when declarations are made. And only when they understand that they can monitor and provide the oversight that is required to protect their votes in the Osun elections and in the 2027 elections.
But what you do about those vulnerabilities is you institute mechanisms that limit the extent of vulnerability, so you prevent any form of attack, because there is no system in the world that is insulated from penetration. So let's get that clear. But in this particular instance, what the political class seem to be scared of is the power that electronic transmission of results has. What does it do? It enhances the transparency of the process. It also ensures it has a deterrent effect, because at the lowest and perhaps the weakest link of our entire results management process is at the collation level. That is where results are manipulated. And what INEC did by introducing electronic transmission, whether it's IREV, is the fact that after voting at the polling unit, collect the results, enter the results on the result sheets, and then upload it, on a portal defined by INEC. That way, it enhances accessibility, so that when it goes to the collation center, everyone already sees the result. So if the collation officer is treasuries of electronic transmission of results, it worked in Nasarawa, it worked in Zamfara, it worked in Abia. There are lots of elections where this particular mode did deepen the integrity of the process. And I think that
we'll have 3 different tracks for results in one particular polling unit. So you have the physical copy, EC8A, you have the electronic EC8A on the BVAS, which the presiding officer has to fill in, and then you have the results transmitted on the IREV. The bigger question is, when there's a discrepancy between these 3 results, which one will you use to resolve that particular
which one takes preeminence?
Exactly.
But out of the 3, only 2 are legally recognized.
Absolutely.
So by the Electoral Act of 2026,
yes,
only one is recognized. The two rather.
Yeah.
The EC8A digital
was introduced by INEC regulations
in the guideline. Just released by
by INEC.
Yeah.
And now it throws up the debate that whether INEC can introduce that using the guidelines. I am of the view that the regulations and guidelines which INEC needs to gazette by virtue of Section 70 of the Electoral Act, I am of the view, and a principled one, that the regulations are also part of the electoral legal framework. And the interpretation by some judges that the regulations and guidelines are not law, I don't think that is the position that the court should hold.
Yes.